and liberated from concentration camps. I don't remember much about what was said, but I do remember one time we were watching the movie called Charles Nuremberg, and he got up and he said, I can't believe you because I can remember the smell of the dead bodies. So this is something that some people in this creation would say that deny even happened. So listen attentively tonight to the freedom as he gives us a brief history of the Holocaust. Give him a welcome.
God knows tonight it's national championship night, and I want to make sure that we're out on time. So I've asked the young gentleman over here to kind of keep an eye on me to let me know about how much time I have. Sometimes, and I just be real honest with you, there is no way in 1 hour that you can ever cover just even a smidgen of Holocaust. I had Ms. Richardson give you about 50 questions. And out of those 50 questions, it was really kind of surprising because generally when you ask students what they want to know about the Holocaust, they generally want to know about the medical experiments in the death camps, all the blood, gore, that kind of thing. What really surprised me, and I was impressed also, is that the questions that you asked had really nothing to do with that. We're going to deal with 2 of them tonight. And one of them is, why did the Nazis really want to have a mass erase? Number 1. And number 2, did the Nazis intend from the very beginning to murder the Jews? I mean, was that their goal from the very start? And I'm going to deal with that one just for the math. But the other questions that y'all kind of put out there was, what was the Catholic Church's response to the Holocaust? How did the world first learn about it? What were the various denominations? How did they approach the Holocaust? And generally, those are things that students won't vote on. You know, they want to vote on the ghettos and all that stuff. So it's really, I think, one of the things that in preparing for this, I don't care what we do. I think the very first thing that we have to talk about is, what is the Holocaust? And I'm going to put up 3 definitions. Excuse me. There we go. We're going to look at 3 definitions. And I have highlighted within each of these definitions really what kind of sets it apart. Okay? The first definition comes from the Imperial War Museum of London. And I'm going to read this to you, but I'm going to concentrate on the part that's highlighted. It says, under the cover of the Second World War, for the sake of their new order, the Nazis sought to destroy all the Jews in Europe. For the first time in history, industrial methods were used for the mass extermination of a whole people. 6 million were murdered, including 1,500,000 children. This event is called the Holocaust. The Nazis enslaved and murdered millions of others as well: gypsies, people with physical and mental disabilities, Poles, Soviet prisoners of war, trade unions, political opponents, prisoners of conscience, homosexuals, and others were killed in vast numbers. The thing is, when you start looking at the Holocaust itself, and you start talking about the extermination or the attempted extermination of the Jews of Europe, it was, and there is no doubt about it, it was an industrial venture. What happens, and I'm going to touch on this a little bit later, but whenever the Nazis invaded Russia, they had what they called Einsatzgruppen, which is mobile death squads. And what they would do is they would come in behind the soldiers, they would go into the towns, and through the military, through the help of the people within those towns, They would round up the Jews, take them outside of town, dig mass graves, and shoot them. What they began to discover was that those people who were doing that, it was just wreaking havoc with their brain. So what they just couldn't stand that emotion. So what the Nazis wanted to do is they wanted to be able to turn around and find a very expedient, quick way to be able to do it. And that's where they turned it, the final solution to the Jewish question. Okay? This definition comes from the Holocaust Museum in Washington, and it refers to a specific genocidal event in the 20th century, and it's a state-sponsored systematic persecution and annihilation of European Jewry by Nazi Germany. Okay? Guys, I think you can read the rest of that because a lot of it stems from that first definition that we saw. But what makes this one unique is this was sponsored by the state. It was sponsored by the government. That's what they wanted to do. And I think you have to look at it from the very start here. Whenever it says that that they have the systematic person, that's the way it began. But persecution turned into attempted annihilation. Okay? That kind of makes sense? Okay? The next one comes from Yad Vashem in Jerusalem. Now you would think, with this coming from a Jewish state, that this one would probably, and I think maybe in some respects it is, but I want you to pay attention to the yellow part. It says, between the German invasion of the Soviet Union in the summer of 1941 and the end of the war in Europe in May 1945, Nazi Germany and its accomplices strove to murder every Jew under their domination. Guys, when you start talking about the final solution, okay, or the Holocaust, it really, even though you have a lot of things going on between 1939, which is the start of the war, and the invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941, in those 2 years, it's really between 1941, when they invaded Russia, that the Holocaust really begins in earnest. That's when you have the development of the death. Okay? That's when you have the development of the mass shootings that take place. Now, very easy to get caught up in statistics, and I don't like them a lot of times, because when you start looking at it, we talk about the Holocaust, and it's just real easy to throw out there, well, we can't fathom that. Guys, that's more people in New York City. That's like wiping out New York City. Greater metropolitan Mobile has somewhere in the neighborhood, and I'd say greater metropolitan Mobile, I'm talking about Sims, Theodore, all these places that are unincorporated. Okay? This is 11 million. Okay? So I want you to kind of pay attention to that. It's not the story of 11 million deaths. What it is, it's 11 million stories of individuals. 11 million stories of people. Okay? These people had families, friends, acquaintances, neighbors. Okay? They were fathers, mothers, sons, daughters, just pick more, cousins, whatever you want to put there, doesn't matter. I think the thing is, they were people just like you and me, just like us sitting here, okay? You're going to hear me say this again. The Jews were set apart because the Nazis considered them a race. The Jews are not a race. They are a religion. Okay? But to the Nazis, they were a race. All right? Okay, of that 11 million, 6 million were Jewish. That's 2/3 of the Jews of Europe. 2/3. Okay? Now, look at this next one, please. 1.5 million were children. That means 90% of the children, Jewish children of Europe were killed. That's probably, to me, is the biggest telling number that we have here. Very honestly, when you start looking at the fact that it's 90%, that to me says that the Nazis truly wanted to exterminate the Jewish people. Because if you eliminate 90% of the children and you're successful in killing off the children, you have no way of being able to extend your population. Make sense? So if you kill off the kids, you have no future. Okay? And I think that becomes a very, very telling statistic here. Okay? Now, this gets to where the questions that you basically, who are the big questions that you would ask? Why did the Nazis want to build a master race? And did the Nazis plan to murder the Jews from the beginning of their regime? Okay? And we're going to kind of go through those. Okay, the first thing you have is we have to look at some world events. Guys, up until the Franco-Prussian War of 1870, 1871, Germany was a geographic expression. As a nation, as a unified nation, it did not exist. It's not until 1870, 1871, with that war, that Germany is united under Otto von Bismarck. Okay? The thing is, Germany, if you stop and look at what else is happening in the world in 1870, 1871, the United States is expanding westward. The United States is expanding into the Caribbean. The European nations are going into Africa. They're kind of carving it up. They're gaining empire. All right. Great Britain, France, they're beginning to carve up the Far East. They're moving into China, Japan. Germany, it's not until 1870, 1871 that they even become a nation. So they get into this race for empire very, very late. Yet as a country, they are extremely nationalistic. Okay? They have a tremendous amount of pride. Guys, Germany was one of the most cultured, one of the most advanced countries in Europe at the turn of the century. Economically, extremely strong. Okay? So we have to kind of pay attention to that. The other thing is, in 1917, you wind up having the Communist Revolution. First time in the history that you have a revolution by the working class, where they actually come in, take over the country becomes a dictatorship, okay? But what their goal is to allow everybody to share the wealth. That slapped Germany in the face. Most of European countries were very concerned about that Russian Revolution. They were afraid that their country could very easily be next, and they sure didn't want that to happen. You also have World War I taking place during this time, from 1914 to about 1919 with the signing of the Treaty of Versailles. Guys, Germany lost World War I. Therefore, they lost territory. They lost territory in the east to Poland, because Poland was created as a nation state after World War I. So they had to give up territory to help create Poland. They also lost land in the west to France, because France wanted to have a buffer zone between themselves and Germany. So you have all of these things going on. After World War I, Germany, basically from a military standpoint, they were limited to something that was not much greater than a National Guard. I think I'm close here, but they were limited to about 100,000 soldiers. Okay? Their Navy was limited to very much of nothing more than a Coast Guard. The countries of Europe wanted to make sure that Germany could never fight a war again. Okay? They had to pay huge war reparations. In other words, with the Allies, they said, we're going to stick it to Germany and we're going to make them pay us back for the damage. The country that was really devastated physically was France. Okay? And France wanted to make sure, when you go back, Franco-Prussian, Franco, France, Prussian, Prussia, which was the biggest state in Germany. Guys, the French and the Germans hated each other. Okay? And they wanted to be sure, the French wanted to be sure that the Germans would never wage war again. Okay? So you have all these things that are going on. But probably the biggest thing is whenever Germany had to sign and surrender and sign the Versailles Peace Treaty, they had to admit that they were solely responsible for beginning World War I. Just flat out not true, but that's what they had to do. Okay? To Germany, that was a stab in the back. Okay? But Germany also felt that their military had been stabbed in the back by communists and by the Jews. Not the Germans. To the Nazis. The Jews were the ones responsible for the communist revolution. It was the Jews that got control of Russia. If you could find anything in the world that the Nazis did not like, it was the fault of the Jews. Extremely anti-Semitic. Okay? But what I also want you to pay attention to is that within Germany, within France, within Belgium, within the parts of Western Europe, the Jews had been pretty much assimilated into those societies. It's whenever you begin, and yes, they were anti-Semitic, but whenever you begin to go east, people become more anti-Semitic, and you can begin to identify the Jewish people. And the guys with the black hats, curly hair, going around doing this all the time. Okay? They were very easy to identify. Okay? So I think you need to pay attention to that. think the other thing that you have to also look at here is there were some economic issues. Guys, after World War I, Germany is devastated. It's decimated, okay? Not only did they lose people, but they had to give up territory, and a lot of that territory had German-speaking people in it. So consequently, to the Germans, that was a slap in the face. The Treaty of Versailles humiliated them, and they were a proud people. Consequently, you will find with the Nazis that that was one of the things that they wanted to do most of all, was to destroy the Versailles Peace Treaty. Okay? Everybody kind of with me here? Okay? Now, have we had economic problems here in the last 10 years? People lost jobs? How many of your parents feel like they've lost all of their retirement? Guys, right now, one of my favorite expressions is I can retire about 4 years after I'm dead. That's when I feel like I can retire. Whenever we went through our economic downturn, my retirement plan basically took a hit, as a lot of retirement plans did. Now, has there been within our country, has there been a big issue about Mexicans coming across the border? You have some people in Congress saying, build big walls, build a big fence, don't let them in. Most of the time, the rationale behind that is if we let the Mexicans come into our country and they're here illegally, they're going to take jobs away from Americans. Okay? Now, we've gone through some pretty bad economic times in the last 10 years. Fair statement. Okay? Guys, it was nothing compared to the Great Depression in 1929. And it was a worldwide depression. The United States, during that period of time, our unemployment was probably somewhere between 25 and 33%. In Germany, it was above 33%. I think the worst that ours has gotten is 10 or 8, right along in there. Okay? People couldn't get jobs for anything. What began to happen is inflation went up so far, so fast, that, within German homes, a lot of times everything the middle class had worked and saved for was completely, totally gone because of inflation. Inflation was so rampant in Germany that a lot of times they would have to pay the workers in the mornings, let them off at lunch so they could buy groceries, because if they didn't, the price of groceries went up by that afternoon and they didn't have enough money to buy groceries. That's pretty significant. Okay? So if you turn around and you take all of these issues, not too terribly far away, the communists have had a revolution that's been successful within Russia. You have economic problems. Okay? You've got a worldwide depression going on. These are all circumstances that will allow someone to come to power who normally would not. Okay? Does that kind of get you caught up with the world? Is that fast enough? Okay? Okay. Why build a master race? Guys, everything in Nazi ideology depended upon race. And this is going to sound strange to us, okay? But to them, it was, to Hitler, it was real, okay? Everything about Nazi ideology comes to us from Hitler. He wrote Mein Kampf, which translates into My Struggle. He did it while he was in prison. Okay? He had tried to overthrow the government in the early 20s. He failed. They put him in prison. Supposed to serve like a 15-year prison sentence or something crazy like that for treason. I think he wound up serving just 9 months or a year or something like that, very, very short. But he wrote Mein Kampf, and he put down everything that he believed. Okay? And I think that whenever you look at this, it's based upon racism. And to Hitler, the struggle of the races explained everything in human history. Everything. Okay? I think you have to also look at that to Hitler, the earth had the ability to only produce so much food. There were finite resources. There was just enough oil to go around. Only so much oil. You're not going to create more. Just so much coal. It's kind of like today people say, I'm going to go ahead and buy waterfront property because they're not making it anymore. Okay? So resources had to be available. And the thing is, I think all of human history, according to Hitler, could be explained in terms of a racial struggle. A person's characteristics, whether you are intelligent, whether you are good looking, whether you have integrity, whether you're honest, okay, is all based upon your race. It has nothing to do with you, the individual. Okay? If you can develop those traits and take those traits because of your race and they're good, you can also do the same thing if those traits are bad. To the not, okay, not only were they devious, they wanted to do Jerusalem, they destroyed the temple, they took all the Jews, and they basically dispersed the diaspora. They kicked them out of Jerusalem, they kicked them out of that land, and they forced them to go to other countries. The Jews owned no land. So to the Nazis, because the Jews did not own land, they didn't really care what happened to that country. They basically went in like parasites and they just took. They made money from those people. They wound up going in and all they wanted to do, according to the Nazis, was become wealthy. They even had issues where they would go in and they would accuse the Jews throughout history of going in and wanting to eat Christian babies. Okay? You go back to the bubonic plague, Black Death, that went through Europe. There were a couple of Jewish communities that were done away with. They were wiped out because a lot of Christians began to blame the Jews on the fact, or they believed that the Jews had poisoned all the wells and brought in the bubonic plague. So Jews have been basically discriminated against throughout history. After all, in Sunday school, we told that it's the Jews that killed Jesus. Okay? So you have to also pay attention to those things. Okay? To the Nazis, the Jews were victorious in the Soviet Union first. So to the Nazis, if they were waging war against the Soviet Union, they were waging war against international Jewry. Okay? Everybody good here? All right. Guys, to the Nazis, they wanted to remove from German territory the unfit. Racially unfit, okay? Groups of people, Roma, Gypsies, Slavs, African Germans. 1936, we have the Berlin Olympic Games held in Berlin. Jesse Owens goes in and takes the Olympic Games by storm. Hitler refused to shake his hand. Would not do it. Because he could not believe that an African was able to beat an enemy. Okay? So you have those things at play. All right? Whether they were biologically unfit, okay? By biologically unfit, what I mean is they had physical or mental disabilities. They were deformed. With these people, what Hitler began to do was he sterilized, and then later on, with the guise of World War II, he began a euthanasia program where he actually went in and he had doctors within facilities. If they felt like a person was unfit for German society, they would give them lethal injections. So they wanted to get rid of anyone who was unfit. Also, if they were socially unfit, if a person was a habitual criminal, okay? If they were political dissidents, if they were drug addicts or alcoholics, okay? They wanted to get rid of them from German society. Guys, Hitler demanded and expected that there would be unconditional obedience by the people. So as a result, he continually had purges where he would get rid of the people that he thought shouldn't belong to his life. Now, ultimately, to Hitler, people existed for the benefit of the state and the racial group. They did not exist for the benefit of themselves or the individual at all. It was what could they do for the state and how could they promote the state. Okay?
Times became hard because Hitler became more powerful and it disturbed our beautiful life. We didn't know from one day to the other what's going to happen. The family was very strong and it was just unthinkable, absolutely unthinkable, that somebody with some power would be able to unroot us.
First of all, we felt that if there's going to be a war, it's going to be like a blitzkrieg. It's going to last maybe a month or so, and then it's going to be over. So we felt, well, it's only going to last for a little while. The Jews will survive. They always somehow do.
This lady here, she goes in and gives her testimony a little bit later. She was part of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. She actually survived.
We didn't think it's going to last long, first of all. Number two, we didn't believe what he said or what he's going to do, that it's going to really happen.
One of the members of the family was a drug man. And one night, they marched by our window with torches and singing our songs and stopping at the house of this relative of mine and bringing him some sort of a salute. And I also remember how impressed I was that somebody would get a whole torchlight parade. This is me as a 10-year-old, right?
Okay, that's a 10-year-old. Guys, one of the things that the Nazis did with their propaganda is they wanted to control every aspect of German society. They did away with organizations like Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. Okay? They didn't do a tremendous amount of soccer programs. What they did is they got young people involved in the Hitler Youth, whether they were male or female. Everything was a way to be able to promote and to bring about Nazi ideology, which centered on race. Now, he's 10 there. Once you look at this next picture.
Proud, as a matter of fact, to have this uniform. I believe at that time, everybody reaching a certain age had to join the Hitler Youth.
How old is he? 4, 5, 6, maybe? Okay? Thing is, he's already a full-fledged Hitler Youth. Now, if you grow up and you can get people when they're young, and you can indoctrinate them into your ideology and into your beliefs, then you have good little Nazis forever. And that was the whole purpose of this. Yeah?
The greetings were changed from Salvete Discipuli and Salve Magister. It was changed to Heil Hitler. We had to, he came in and he said, Heil Hitler, students, and we had to stand up saying, Heil Hitler, teacher. And then we had a different curriculum because we had this Rassenkunde, which is raciology. That was a regular subject that we had, and we were supposed to learn what an Aryan is, the Aryan race. And opposed to the Aryan race, we were the Jews. And the children were the students were to learn what makes the difference between a blonde, blue-eyed, pure Aryan to a Jew. And I hated this biology teacher with a a passion. He always pulled me up on my sideburns. And he put me in front of the class and I said, now here's a Jew. And he started to describe my nose and my cheekbones and my hair and my features and how to recognize a Jew. And I was very humiliated and I hated it. And I felt terrible about the whole thing.
All my friends that I was good friends, that I would never think that they would do it. They were singing anti-Semitic songs, and they made up songs. And I recall one song, they were singing it. It says, remember Jew?
Times became hard. My oldest brother, Felix, was a brilliant.
Guys, I had to fast forward through that simply because he uses some phrases there that I won't play for you. Okay? The whole thing with that film clip was whenever you start looking at what occurred, especially within Poland, and that's what these last two guys were talking about, the further east you go, the more anti-Semitic the general population becomes. The Jews had been really well assimilated into Western Europe. They weren't assimilated well in Eastern Europe. Okay?
Student, brilliant student and a brilliant athlete. And he went to the Schiller Real Gymnasium, which was one of the best high schools in Stettin. And even though all the Jewish students were asked to leave, the principal didn't want him to leave. First of all, he didn't look Jewish, and second of all, he was a great asset, both athletically and scholastically, to the school. So he told my mother, don't worry about it, leave him be, because he's of great benefit to us. Under the Nazis, that period became a period of Rassenkunde, where they were taught racism, the racism of the Nazi ideology. And the teachers who were teaching it were not on the staff. They were Nazi functionaries who used to come and teach in the morning this course in racism. It was based on that whole bizarre notion that you can tell a race by the nose and by the this and by the that, and that racial character, Jews are a race and all that sort of thing. Well, in order to demonstrate what he was talking about, the teacher used to pick on a student to illustrate what is the Aryan face, what is the Aryan head, and so on and so forth. Try to make it very scientific. Well, one day he picked on Felix. And Felix was a blonde, very handsome boy, well developed, and he gets up in front of the class and he tells him to take off his shirt, and he turns his profile and he says, now you see the pure Aryan head, and now you see pure blue Aryan eyes, and even the eyebrows, and he goes on and on and on, and he says, you see the chest development and the shoulder bones, this is Aryan, typical Aryan. Okay, this class is still not roaring with laughter, but then he tells him to take off his pants and he wants to go on. Now the class is, roaring with laughter, but they're not saying anything. He is insulted. He thinks that this is a reflection on his teaching technique. And he runs out of the class and he puts the class on report with the principal that they have no respect for the Nazi ideology and that they are hooligans and all kinds of things. The background of this is that there were young boys, for example, who resisted belonging to the Hitler Youth. Well, that was very punishable. He thought that he had come across a group of these kids who didn't want to be regimented under the Nazi rules. So the principal, what he said to him, I of course don't know, but he did call my mother in and he says, I'm in a terrible quandary, because this guy, if the kids tell him why they were laughing, I'm out of a job. Not only out of a job, it might even be worse. So you have to take your son out now.
Why would he have asked a Jewish boy to take his pants off? For a race lesson. Guys, if you go back to your Sunday school class, to be able to be identified with God, a Jewish male had to go through circumcision. So as soon as if he had taken his pants off, as soon as he did that, he would have realized that instead of being a pure Aryan like he was trying to portray this kid, he would have realized that he was a Jew. That right there shows you how unscientific everything that the Nazis was doing. Yet they were trying to put a label of scientific expression on everything they did. Okay?
It started in 1933, really. But I had very good friends of whom I knew that they were members of the Nazi Party since 1928. And she was one of my best friends. She didn't care that I was Jewish, and I didn't care that she was a Nazi. She was one of my sports friends, and we got along very well. But then, of course, in 1933, everything changed. Like, overnight, you could not go into a public place, no restaurants, no swimming pools, no movies, nothing. You were not allowed in any public place anymore. And the people that you knew, most of them, not because they hated us all of a sudden, but they were all afraid because that was the way it was. We told you Jew, you'll be punished. It was very hard. I was 19 years old, and all of a sudden I was shut off from everything. I got a letter from my sports club in Ulm that I wasn't welcome there anymore because I was Jewish, and that was the thing that I loved to do most, as I said before, sports. And all of a sudden that was finished. There was nothing I could do. We just were really vegetating, if you want to call it that. So.
Okay. Another part of Nazi ideology was this whole idea of Lebensraum, or living space. If they were going to be the master race, they felt that history was a struggle with other races, and it wasn't peaceful. Today, we want to try to get along with our neighbors. To them, that didn't matter. To the Nazis, it was justifiable to take territory from the inferiors. It was not only something that you did, it was something that was almost expected from Nazi ideology. To the Nazis, and it basically depended upon not only going to war, but what they ultimately wanted to do. And this is something that Hitler had planned from the very beginning. Because Russia is made up of Slavs, Russians. When you get on the eastern side of the Ural Mountains, a lot of the people begin to take on Asiatic characteristics. Okay, because they had come from Mongolia, they had come from China. Okay, 3 times. These were all inferior races. And to Hitler, in order to be able to have that master race, what he was going to do is he was going to go in and take over Russia, and all the people, the Slavs, the Russians, the Ukrainians, all of these people were going to become slave labor for the master race. Literally slave labor. Okay? So I think with this and this whole idea of gaining living space, the Aryan Germans, they have to eliminate all people that are a racial threat to them. beginning with the Jews. Okay? The next thing I want to look at are the laws that were passed by the Nazis. Between 1933 and 1939, they passed over 400. Those early laws were trying to restrict public life. The lady before, she talked about the fact that you couldn't go to parks, you couldn't go to restaurants, that sort of thing. What they also tried to do was to limit their ability to practice their profession. They began to eliminate doctors and lawyers from being able to practice medicine. They began to take Jews and move them out of positions of management, out of being college professors, anything like that, and they began to replace them with the Germans. Okay? Then in 1935, you have the Nuremberg laws. Guys, the Nuremberg laws began to take discrimination against the Jewish people. It begins to take it out of the realm of religion, and it puts it definitely within the realm of a race. They began to define who was Jewish. Didn't matter that you had changed your religion and you become a Christian. If you had 3 grandparents that were Jewish, you were Jewish. If you had 2 grandparents that were Jewish, or 1 grandparent that was Jewish, even if your parents weren't Jewish, they called you Mishlinga, which means mongrel. Okay? Basically, mixed. And to the Nazis, that was unforgivable. Okay? Their citizenship was taken away. They couldn't vote to hold public office. And guys, the United States is not wearing the white hat here. A lot of the Nuremberg laws and a lot of the laws that the Nazis passed were very, very similar to our Jim Crow laws. Okay? I'm 62. I can still remember one of the worst chewing outs I ever got by an adult that I did not know happened in J.C. Penney in Springdale Plaza. Springdale Plaza existed before there was ever Bel Air Mall. And it was a strip mall. Okay? You had Gapers and you had J.C. Penney. As soon as you walked into J.C. Penney, at the front door, there were 2 water fountains. One had the sign on it white, the other one had color. I think I was 4. Couldn't no more read than man in the moon. I was thirsty. I went and got a drink of water out of the cold water fountain. And a guy comes up who worked at J.C. Penney, comes up and just reams me out. Of course, a 4-year-old kid, I'm going to run to my mom. Okay? My mom walked out of J.C. Penney and has never shopped, or did not until her death, never shopped at J.C. Penney again. How many of you know where the Sanger Theater is? Guys, when the Sanger Theater, back in the 40s, 50s, 30s, you pick the date, blacks would have to walk. When you would go into the Sanger Theater, you would get your ticket out on the street. Blacks would have to walk up to the ticket counter, buy their ticket, turn around and go to the back of the theater, go up a back step, and sit up in a balcony. Could not sit for twice. Against the law. Okay? Jim Crow laws took blacks' right to vote away. They had to pay poll tax, in other words, pay to vote. They would give tests to see whether or not a person knew enough about government to be able to vote. Okay? Didn't ask for those things of blacks. Blacks did not go into restaurants. Did not go into white restaurants. Too many states have on their books laws that existed. It was against the law a black marry a white. White nurses in hospitals could not care for black males in a hospital. So you have all of these laws that existed right here in America. Yet you also had the same type of thing going on here within Nazi Germany. Both at the same time. Okay.
I think we children felt it more acutely because of the harassment that we received almost on a daily basis in school and on the street, and on a different level than the parents. The parents thought initially that this would blow over, you see, until more and more laws, like the Nuremberg laws and other laws were introduced, which made it more difficult. We couldn't have the same maid in the household anymore. We couldn't buy in certain stores anymore. We couldn't go to a swimming pool anymore.
And he said you couldn't have the same maid in the house. Under the Nuremberg laws, any female for a Jewish household.
We couldn't go into parks anymore, and all of these laws were introduced. We really felt it more and more year after year. I said people call us names, people, kids, actually, one day, appeared the sign, that said the Jews were no longer welcome in the park. That was a big thing for me, because that was my second home. That was where I lived. The eminent studies, orthodontists. Then I've been going to, and one day we came, and there was a big sign in the front door to the waiting room that said, we no longer treat Jewish patients. So it was obvious that he was playing into the Nazi ideology. At one point, we were forbidden to take the subway. The Jews were forbidden to ride buses and subways. Now, I did it anyway, and this created actually moral dilemma for my mother. Because as I said, my mother tried to instill high values of morality in me, and
He said the Jews couldn't ride subways and couldn't ride buses, which was their public transportation. I still remember the buses that we had in Mobile back in the 50s, very early 60s. They had two doors. They had two doors. If the black wanted to get on the bus, they'd have to go to the front door, pay their fare, and then go to the back of the bus and go on the bus through that back door. As soon as you walked into as soon as you took the steps up into the bus, there was a white line that was probably about that wide that was painted across that floor. Blacks did not go past that white line. They could only sit in probably the back quarter of that bus. If it was already crowded, they stood. They did not sit with whites. It just didn't happen. Downtown Mobile, there was a 5 and dime store. Y'all don't even know what that is now. Okay, Dollar General. Okay, they would have where business people come in and eat lunch. They would have two counters, two fountain areas. One on one side of the store, one on the other. Black sat at one, white sat at the other. Guys, I was in 3rd grade before I ever went to school with black. Prior to that, blacks did not go to school with whites in the South. Okay? So I think you have all those things very much play in me. We stop short of the annihilation, but the discrimination and the prejudice, we just as guilty as they.
How could you live without taking public transportation? So I asked my mother about it, and she gave me some basic answer, which basically said do it. And actually I was blessed because as a child, I was not particularly Jewish. This helped me this helped me in Berlin, and helped me during the war when you go on to. That was not easily picked out. So I was glad to start with the challenge. No problem.
As soon as the Nazis came to power, it was as though a blanket of fear, a heavy blanket of fear descended on us. We were afraid to go places, we were afraid. These are places that we have been to before.
I lived in virtually constant fear every single day that some of the Hitler Youth boys would try and beat us up and would lie in wait behind some building that we may not have been alerted to previously, and they were much bigger than we were, and just beat us with impunity because certainly nobody was going to stop them. The Jews were dismissed from the civil service. They gradually lost positions as leading employees. They were ousted from the cultural world. And by and by, they found that simply being able to support oneself was becoming progressively more difficult. Book Ferguson and like were simply part and parcel of a movement which was designed to make Germans think alike.
Whenever they did the book money,
At one point, we were forbidden to take this out.
Take the internet. Did the internet go down? Are you on internet? Are you on the internet? No. Oh, I was gonna say, mine went down, so.
give me 2 minutes.
At one point, we were
Second.
trouble.
Second question that was posed is, did the Nazis plan to kill the Jews from the very beginning of their regime? Guys, most historians don't believe that they did. They believe that it evolved into it. That as they took over territory, and what I want you to see here is this is a map of Europe. Anything that is red or anything that is a rose color was what Germany occupied. Guys, by 1942, they dominated Europe. Okay? They basically had the vast majority of the Jewish people under their control, and they didn't know what else to do with it. Okay? I began this with saying, I began this with saying that it's not the story of 11 million deaths. What you have is you have 11 million individual stories of people. And that's what we sometimes forget about this. Problem is, people have not learned their lesson. We still have genocide, the attempting to wipe out a group of people happening within our world. It's happened since the Holocaust. It's happened since World War II. And if we're not careful, it's going to happen again. That's why we have to know our history over the destiny of the people. Okay? That's the homework mentioned.